Hi, I'm Nina Preston. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and here we're at Ben's in Cass City. We're gonna go on a grocery store tour and shop for some heart health. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the US. Almost half the population has high blood pressure, and with nutrition, we can prevent or delay this condition. When we are talking about nutrition, the first thing I like to teach people is reading the nutrition label on products, because this is going to tell us an abundance of information. The first place we want to look is at the serving size, and for this one it's one meal. After that, we're going to want to look at our saturated fat intake. Ideally, we want this to be less than 10% of our daily caloric intake. The next component we want to look at is sodium. And ideally, per meal, we want it to be less than 600 milligrams. Daily, we want it to be less than 2,300 milligrams. And then we're gonna wanna be looking at our dietary fiber. A good product that has a good source of fiber is gonna have at least 3 grams or more. In addition to that, we're gonna be looking at our added sugars. So again, we want that to be less than 10% of our daily caloric intake. We're gonna compare these two products. So this is a Healthy Choice Asian style steak and pepper frozen meal, and then this is Stouffer's Swedish meatballs. So let's start with the Swedish meatballs. All right, so per container is the serving size, so everything is based off that. This does have 11 grams of saturated fat, which is about over half of our daily intake, so this might not be the best option for us. Sodium is 1,150 milligrams. Again, that's about half or a bit over, so maybe this isn't the best option for us. Dietary fiber, it actually has 3 grams, so it's impressive here. And then there are no added sugars. However, just because of the saturated fat and sodium content, this would not be the most heart healthy option. We could perhaps look at a different option like Healthy Choice, the Asian style steak and pepper. Again, we're gonna start by looking at the serving size. So one meal, this whole container. The saturated fat is 2 grams, so it's 10%, much less than the Stouffer's. The sodium is 560 milligrams, which would be an appropriate amount of sodium. The dietary fiber, this has 4 grams, so that would be great. And then the added sugar, this does have 4 grams of added sugar, but that is about 8% of our daily caloric intake, so that would be completely appropriate and adequate. So to create a healthy, balanced meal, we definitely want to take into consideration different nutrients. So we're trying to build a balanced plate. What does that mean? That means we want half of our plate to be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of our plate to be a good carbohydrate, and then a quarter of our plate to be some lean protein. In this aisle, we're going to be focusing on our grains and the ones that we want to pick. So we're focusing mainly on getting that fiber in. And we can do that by picking foods like intact grains like barley, oats, quinoa, farro. These are all great examples. When I look at this particular pearled barley, it has about 5 grams of fiber. So this would be an excellent source of fiber. Beans and lentils are also a great source of fiber. They tend to be less expensive. They're great fillers for meals. So definitely take a look at these. And then some carbohydrates that we're just gonna wanna choose less of or in moderation are gonna be more of our processed foods. So like our ramen, our rice-a-ronis, our white rice, anything instant, it's just not gonna have as much fiber. For example, this ramen has 1 gram of fiber, so it's nothing noteworthy. So when we are trying to build that balanced meal, we can definitely utilize our canned items. These are great options whether you're in a pinch. They tend to be less expensive. The only tip I would have with this is trying to choose low sodium or no sodium. When we look at the sweet peas that are just generic sweet peas, this has about 300 milligrams of sodium. Keep in mind, our daily allowance is 2,300 milligrams. When we look at the sweet peas no salt added, we're at 15 milligrams. So that is a huge difference. This is a great way to make sure that you're not going to overdo it in a particular item that you didn't want to get sodium from. So we're here in the cereal aisle, and in this aisle in particular, we just want to be mindful of added sugar. Excess added sugar can actually increase our triglycerides, which isn't great for our cardiac health and our lipid panel. So when we're analyzing these types of foods, we just want to choose lower added sugar, less than 10%, and more fiber. Again, we're trying to shoot for at least 3 grams per serving. So again, back to that balanced plate, we want half of our plate to be fruits and vegetables. And in our produce section, we can get a lot of variety. We want fruits and vegetables because it offers fiber, it offers vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. My biggest suggestion for people to buy produce that's in season. They're gonna be less expensive and they're gonna taste better. We want people to eat the rainbow because each fruit and vegetable offer different vitamins and minerals. Especially when we're in flu season, we want as many antioxidants and phytochemicals as possible. For example, our tomatoes have something called lycopene in them, which is actually a protective nutrient for our heart health. So definitely try and incorporate these into our meals as much as we can. And another example would be our oranges, which hold great vitamin C, which is great for our immune health, especially when we're in flu and cold season. If you live a busy lifestyle, whether you have kids or you travel for work, grabbing one of these convenient vegetables is an easy way to make sure you're getting your servings in throughout the day. We're aiming for 2 to 3 cups of vegetables per day, or 1.5 to 2 cups of fruit per day. So again, to create that balanced meal, we want half of our plate to be fruits and vegetables, 1/4 of our plate to be grains, and then 1/4 of our plate to be quality protein. And when we're choosing protein, we want to choose the least saturated fat. Saturated fat tends to come from animal products, which is okay to choose, but there are ways to make it leaner. For example, if we're picking chicken thighs to make for dinner, this has the skin on. We're going to try and maybe pick one that eliminates that just to create more leanness in our meat. Another option that we could choose that would be a leaner choice is perhaps fresh chicken breasts. This is white meat. We've eliminated any extra fat, any skin, and then the key would just be how we prepare. So we really recommend grilling, baking, air frying, sauteing. We want to avoid any deep frying, cooking in lard, butter, coconut oils, those types of saturated fats. So milk and dairy is also a place that we can get adequate protein. The nice thing about dairy products is that we can choose 2%, skim, reduced fat. That's all reducing that saturated fat, which is something that we want to try and eliminate as much as possible. For example, if you're interested in having some cottage cheese at a meal or a snack, this is just a regular 4% fat, which has about 3 grams of saturated fat versus getting the 2% version, which has about 1.5. So it's half the amount of saturated fat. And just an overview, eating heart healthy isn't anything to be scary or it should be something difficult. We basically just want to make that balanced plate by having half of our plate fruits and vegetables, 1/4 of our plate some sort of carbohydrate, 1/4 of our plate some lean, adequate protein, and we can do that by shopping here at Ben's in Cass City. I challenge you, next time you come to the grocery store, pick up a product, look at the nutrition label, see if that's meeting your fiber, see if that's low sodium, see if that's our healthy option for you. And if you're looking for some more nutrition education, go to aspirerhs.org.